Hello, it's my pleasure to welcome you into The Light from Ocean Reef, a podcast aimed at shining the Bible's light on our daily lives. I'm Dan Meyer, chaplain in residence at the beautiful Ocean Reef community in Key Largo, Florida. Before coming here, I served as the lead pastor of a Chicago area megachurch and as host of an Emmy Award-winning television news magazine. I'm a graduate of Yale University and Princeton and Fuller seminaries, a husband and a dad. And someone like you, I imagine, who's always looking for practical wisdom to make the best of life. I hope this podcast gives you some of that. We began, I think it was 2 weeks ago now, or maybe it was 3, a conversation about the Psalms as a body of literature in the Hebrew Scriptures that has been so cherished by so many people through the years as a hymn book, as a personal prayer diary, as an expression, a model for a conversation with God. The Psalms have been treasured by people all across history and from different faith traditions. The 23rd Psalm has been maybe preeminent. I don't know that we can rank what the number one Psalm is. They're all so important, but the 23rd Psalm has been particularly cherished by so many people through time. And in part because it makes so vivid both the longings of the human heart and the character of God, who is the Good Shepherd. And in a very succinct way, describes both of those things. What it is we need and want, or ought to be leaning towards, and the very gifts of God for us if we lean into Him, if we let Him be our shepherd. So I would love it if we could begin just by having someone read to us the 23rd Psalm.
The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right path for His name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for You are with me. Your rod, Your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely Your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
Thank you. That is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So I want to think with you today about just this one little couplet. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Or as some translations put it, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. I lack nothing. We spent some considerable time on just the idea, the Lord is my shepherd. And I asked the question here, how do you know if the Lord is your shepherd? And I said the way you know that whether the Lord is your shepherd is first, do you see yourself as a sheep? Are you willing to acknowledge your need for leadership in life? And are you willing to choose that particular God as your shepherd and follow where that shepherd leads? But this promise here is that this shepherd is a provider. And that is one of the main reasons to be willing to say, okay, it's all right for me to admit that I'm a sheep and that I need leading because we trust in the heart of the one who would lead us. It goes back to the issue of authority and the character of authority that Os Guinness was just giving us today. If we really believe in the leader, we're willing to do all kinds of things that we might not do if there was no leader and all we had was ourselves. I lived, as many of you know, in Ireland for 2 years, back in the early 80s. It was the time of the Troubles in Belfast, the height of the Troubles in Belfast. The city streets were teeming with British Army vehicles and soldiers, armed soldiers moving up and down the landscape. It was a place of barbed wire and walls built between neighborhoods because of the terrible clashes that went on with people in that place. It was a crazy time of bombs going off and hunger strikes and assassinations of all kinds of people. Often the paramilitaries would assassinate the best of the other side, ironically. They would take out the moderates, the people that might have been the peace builders in the community. They would kill those people so that the extremes would always prevail. In some ways, I feel like I'm living in Belfast again today. We're living in a society that is just in pitched battle in so many places, and as we've been discussing this morning, struggles to even have conversations between neighbors about the common hopes and desires. Because all of us at the core, we long for provision. We long for the things that are most needful in the human heart and soul. And so I want to think a little bit today on this aspect of the psalm, as the psalmist describes God as the provider, the one in whose presence we lack nothing. I was traveling through Ireland back in those days, through the countryside with a young friend of mine named Ian Macpherson, and and not Irish. He lived in Ireland, but he came from strong Scottish roots. And Ian became a very, very dear friend, and we would get into my little red Ford Escort, and we would drive all over Ireland together and just explore these little towns and these fields. And I remember a trip out to the Cliffs of Moher, where the landscape just drops off hundreds and hundreds of feet to a surging slate sea. It's spectacular. And if you're interested in, have not ever been to the Cliffs of Moher, come into my office here at the chapel. I've got a photograph that I took that day with Ian as I lay out at the edge of the cliffs, and I snapped a picture looking down the cliffs like the bows of mighty battleships, and caught an eagle flying in the sky there. And come to my office and you'll see that photograph. But I was with Ian on one of these trips, and we hiked up into the hills, and we were heading towards this kind of old monastery in the southwest coast of Ireland. And as we went up into the hills, we moved towards this stone crucifix that the monks there had placed on the highest bluff in that location. And by the time we reached that particular spot, the sun had descended, and it got to that magical place, and you've seen it here, where all the colors of creation turn incandescent, and the world becomes luminous. And even things that are sullied in other light suddenly look beautiful and hopeful and of God. The hillside that we were on actually continued on up past the place where the cross was. And from that particular point up higher beyond the cross, we could gaze down and we could see the world from the same angle that the occupant of the cross might. It brings me now to the scene from The Passion of the Christ, where the camera swings up behind Jesus on the cross, and you suddenly see what he sees, the teeming throngs of humanity, the outline of the city of Jerusalem, the things which both make him, as Oz reminded us today, weep at brokenness and surge with love towards the still there potential of humanity. This was kind of the viewpoint we had that day from that hillside looking down. Ireland is, as you have heard said, and maybe some of you have seen, is reputed for its 40 shades of green, right? 40 shades of green. I've always thought that was an interesting idea until I got there and realized there are at least 40 shades of green. It's such a robustly beautiful, colorful landscape. And on that spring afternoon with my friend Ian, I felt like I was seeing all of the colors, all the 40 shades at the same time. And we watched as the hillsides just cascaded away, and below them, the sea, the beautiful, beautiful sea. Next to the cross, and this is, I would say, the thing I remember most from that particular moment, were the sheep that studded those hillsides. I've got a photograph of this. I need to pull it out and put it into PowerPoint form at some point, but it was just an incredible array of hundreds of sheep that speckled the hillsides there around as those hills rolled down towards the sea. And the way the sun hit their wool at that time of day made them seem to kind of glow this pinkish white against the lush green carpet and the lengthening shadows. And I'd always thought to myself that sheep weren't particularly bright creatures. More on that later. But on that day, you'd had a hard time convincing me of that, because for a moment, and that particular afternoon, they looked like almost supernatural beings out there on the hillside. The ones that were closest to us, where Ian and I were standing, were lying down. Many of them were munching on the cool grass of that place, the sweetness of the thick green grass. They were staring dreamily away into space. And I know it sounds crazy, but it seems like those creatures were onto something that I wish I was onto. They seemed to have this perfect peace, this spirit of contentment, this simple confidence in the future, in the next hours, in just this day. A kind of peace that I had been searching for all of my life. And I will never forget the image, again, of that watchful one up on the cross, of those sheep on the hillside. And each of those images brings to mind for me today the words of the psalmist: "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, I shall lack nothing. He makes me to lie down in green pastures." Isn't that a great vision? Could you see that with me at least a little bit? Who of us in our right mind doesn't yearn in some part of us for that kind of an experience in our own lives? To the perfect peace, the pure contentment, the simple confidence in the fulfillment of our deepest needs. And this is, I think, the good news that I want to proclaim to all of us today that comes out of this psalm is that there's something we can learn even from sheep about how we can come to lie down in green pastures like that. Because it does require something for us and of us. One of the things that's important to understand from the start is that sheep don't really find it tons easier to get to that place of peace and contentment than you and I do. They actually aren't just sort of naturally this way. In fact, it's extremely difficult to get sheep to lie in green pastures or any other place for that matter. And again, I worked on a sheep and dairy farm during those 2 years, the Lamberton family farm. I think I've shared some stories from that. And I learned more about sheep than I ever wanted to know. And one of the reasons that sheep don't easily do this and lie down like this is that sheep are tremendously timid creatures by nature. Now, do not hold the sheep that you meet at the petting zoo to this standard, because they've been domesticated. You're not meeting them in the wild. But in a natural setting, even a jackrabbit suddenly bolting from behind a bush can stampede a whole flock of sheep. They are such skittish beings that just being spooked like that can make the mothers miscarry their young. You know, they're just that reactive to things. Now, you would not know that looking at them, obviously, because they've got all this fluffy padding to protect themselves. You'd think they'd be unafraid of much. But then again, if you think about it, people are a little like that. A lot of people are very well padded in certain ways, with money or with prestige or with education or with position or with a week of eating at Ocean Reef. I don't know, years of it. People will often, like sheep, they'll bolt quickly from relationships. They'll run from one job or from one church to the next. It's amazing. I was just always stunned by people. "Well, I'm leaving your church." I said, "Really? Why are you leaving your church?" "Well, I didn't like this." I'm thinking, so you're going to find a perfect church that doesn't have anything you don't like. And I said, "Let me know when you find it, so I can go there too." People will see, like sheep, they'll see enemies, they'll see opposition, they'll see reason for worry looming behind many bushes. They will find it hard to lie down. They will find it difficult to truly rest or feel peace, because it's a well-known fact that to get sheep to lie down, that you must get them to a point where, at least in that moment, they are almost free of fear. Free of fear. And it's a very good thing that a good shepherd understands that about sheep. By the way, what's the most common message of the angels? Don't be afraid. What is it that perfect love does? What does it do? It casts out all fear. Philip Keller, who wrote a wonderful book on the subject of the 23rd Psalm, who is a real-life shepherd, says that this is why a good shepherd doesn't just watch from a distance, but actually walks among his flock by day and by night. We see Christmas cards, and we have seen images where the shepherd's off maybe sitting on the hillside at a campfire and the sheep are out here somewhere. That's not actually how it works, because I've been out there with real shepherds, and I know that they may take a momentary break, but much of the time they're simply walking around and among the sheep, just seeing how they're doing, and more importantly, helping them to do better by simply being the presence in their midst. Because it calms the sheep to see the shepherd walking in the field. It steadies their nerves and soothes their spirits. It lets them know that if anything really dangerous should come up, then somebody stronger and wiser is going to act on their behalf. And as I've said, sheep are not the brightest creatures God ever made, but under the care of a good shepherd and a present shepherd, they become better beings than they would be otherwise. So could this have anything to do with why the New Testament says that the God of all creation chose to become flesh and walk amongst us? To get in amongst the flock. Or why in Psalm 121, David takes pains to remind us. He says, "The Lord who watches over you will not slumber or sleep." He's like a good shepherd who's present to you. It may be why Jesus said his final words to his disciples, that what Christians call the Great Commission, were, "Lo, I am with you always." I'm with the flock always. So I don't know any better way of saying it than this. The ground of your life, my life, our world may be uneven, and it often is. The wind and the wolves of life may be howling, and they're out there, and they have to be taken seriously. But the Good Shepherd is always walking with us. He's always amongst us. And because of that reality, and sometimes this is a big article or a leap of faith for us, it's okay, it's safe to lie down and to rest. To be human beings, not just restless human doings. This is what I myself struggle to remember at times. But fear is not the only thing that keeps sheep from enjoying peace and contentment. I'm told to lie down. Sheep also have to be free of what I will call friction. Free of fear and free of friction. And by friction, I mean social tension. Social tension. Sheep can't really bear to be pressed up against one another. They don't like being in that kind of proximity. They almost never lie down until they've got their own space. Think about it. Think about images you've seen of sheep. They're not in clumps. They're spread out across space. They may be near others, but they're not on top of each other. You might have known this from the course you took in Understanding Sheep 101, but it took me a while to figure this out. But just like as chickens have a pecking order, so sheep have a budding order. A budding order. The toughest old ewe will drive others away from the the best grazing or the best bedding ground by butting them with her head or charging them with stiff-legged gait, and the rams are worse in terms of their territorial asserting of themselves. And following the example of that most aggressive sheep, there will be a descending order of rank that will get established using the same butting technique. And when this tendency to just be constantly hitting each other to prove greater strength, when this tendency goes completely unchecked, it results in tremendous natural tension within the flock. And the sheep become edgy and irritable. And as all of this conflict or this subtle expectation of the next conflict keeps going, it compromises the health of individual sheep and the well-being of the whole flock. This establishing our pecking order. Isn't it good that's only true of sheep? Right? I mean, you can imagine, like, what if that was actually a problem with people, too? What if we were constantly fighting to see who the top sheep was? What if we were subtly vying for position and charging each other and protecting our ground? Where are you seeing that going on in the world? Where do we see it going on in our own communities here even? It would be hard for us to really lie down. And what an irony that we were in the most beautiful pastures of all, and we can't seem to lie down. We can't seem to enjoy the beauty here and the peace that's here. And if we're feeling this tension all the time, then we're always standing up to protect our turf or our rights or our reputation or to rally back at somebody that's invaded our space. You know, what a terrible thing if that becomes the dominant ethos in our family, in our businesses, in our communities, our clubs, wherever it may be. But if it were that way, the prayer would be, I hope the shepherd intervenes. I hope the good shepherd gets involved. And that is exactly what the good shepherd in the sheep world does in those moments. Sometimes the shepherd steps in to trounce the offending sheep. And I've seen that happen. I've watched my friend, the Lambertons, do that with a particularly ornery sheep. You know, he'll knock him over with his boot just to say, hey, none of that. We won't take any more of that. Sometimes it'll just be a verbal reprimand. Sometimes it'll be a whack with his staff. And shepherds really, they do carry, more about that later, but they do carry a staff. And even though it breaks his heart, in the end, there are individual instances where a shepherd will be forced to actually destroy a sheep who insists upon bullying others and can't be stopped. Most of the time, the shepherd just simply shows himself to the flock. And I don't know why it works, but as the shepherd moves within the flock, the more the sheep see of the shepherd, the better they seem to get along with each other. And I think that's true with human beings too. I believe that if we could fully tune into the shepherd's presence amongst us, if we understood the shepherd's heart more deeply, if we were aware right now of the presence of Jesus Christ with us, of God the Father and the Holy Spirit with us right now, then a lot of our petty rivalries and our social strivings would cease, which is why faith is essential to the development of virtue, and virtue to the capacity for freedom and liberty. It's why that golden triangle is the way it is, as Os Guinness describes it so well. It depends so much on our vision and our sense of the shepherd. Because when we look at the tears of compassion that the shepherd has in his eyes, it reminds us that those we regard as the least and the last and the lost aren't always that in his sight, that he sees their dignity, as Oz was pointing out. He sees the value of people that we've written off, or that we just fear, or that we just keep at arm's length. If we could see Jesus, the Good Shepherd, more clearly, I think, we would understand he's our Savior today, and he is also our judge tomorrow. And that he's not warmly inclined towards people that are just habitually headbutting other people. He just isn't. And we may get away with this for a season, but there is accountability. Again, going back to one of the fundamental principles, there is accountability in the end. So Jesus offers this word of challenge to the headbutters. He says, remember, the first will be last. The one that always has to be in the front of the feeding line will find themselves at the other end of the line if they keep that up. And the last will be first. The one who's been constantly pressed down, it's going to get lifted up because I'm the good shepherd. And he offers this word of comfort to the people who have chosen to back out of that whole head-butting game. He says, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. And as any shepherd will tell you, it's especially those sheep who have been persecuted, who have not lashed back, who gain a higher place of affection in the shepherd's eyes. He develops a feeling for that sheep. And there's more. It's ironically the sheep at the bottom of the budding order that are frequently the most calm, the most rested, the most healthy of the sheep. They don't have their wool looking mangy in different places because somebody's been yanking the wool out, because they just haven't been in that kind of fight. And it's these ones, more than others, that actually have the time to lie down because they're not so busy contesting. So competition's a great thing. It's a fun thing when it's a game. It can refine us and improve us and strengthen us. We should try and win that croquet match and that pickleball game and the sailing race. But we keep it in perspective because we remember the value of the people that we're interacting with. And at the end of the day, all of us want to find a place to lie down. To lie down. So which kind of sheep are you or am I? Are we the headbutter or are we the other kind? We want contentment, we want peace, we want that stuff that's symbolized by those sheep resting and grazing. To gain the position means finding freedom from fear, freedom from friction with others, and one last thing. But I think we're out of time. We'll come back to it next week. Hey, thanks for your time today. May the Lord bless you, keep you. We'll see each other again soon. Thanks so much. Okay. See you.
That's a wrap for today. I just want to say thanks for joining us for this study. If you know of others who might appreciate the chance to listen in to this sort of content, please encourage them to go to YouTube or Apple Podcasts and search for the Ocean Reef Chapel channel. Once again, I'm Dan Meyer, and I hope you'll come back soon to enjoy more of the light from Ocean Reef.